Order, order. Hello and welcome to Reporters Without Orders, a podcast where we discuss what made news, what didn't, and some things that absolutely shouldn't have. I'm your host, Tanishka Sodhi, and joining me in the studio today for the very first time is my colleague, Sumedha Mittal.
Hi, Tanishka.
Newslaundry's newest reporter. So Sumedha has worked on a story this week along with Ashwin, our colleague, about how there has been a 38% drop in the minority affairs budget, which has resulted in education and livelihood schemes taking a hit. And joining us through Zoom is Pallavi Pundir, a senior reporter at Vice World News who focuses on stories of intersections of gender and politics, tech and society, and human rights. Hi, Pallavi. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Lovely to meet you guys.
Pallavi is joining us from Jakarta, Indonesia. What is the weather like in Jakarta right now, Pallavi? Because in Delhi, it's February and we're already experiencing heat wave warnings.
So it's pretty much coastal weather over here. Just think of Bombay and that's pretty much how it is over here, except it rains a lot.
Okay. Again, like Bombay.
Yeah, again, like Bombay. And it floods a lot, again, like Bombay.
So Pallavi's recent story is titled Thousands of Dead Men Are Fighting to be Declared Alive. And it's a fascinating read about a growing community of the living dead in India and how it is exposing weaker land laws and a trail of land grabs. So we'll discuss the story in detail in the podcast. Let's start with Sumedha right now. So Sumedha, it's also your first month in Newslaundry, right?
Yeah, it's about to be over.
Okay, and how has it been? I think you've already done 3 great stories for us.
Yeah, I suppose they are great stories and important.
Good. So, are you nervous for your first podcast?
A little bit.
Okay, I mean, by asking you that, I'm probably making you more
Yeah,
nervous,
you are aggravating the situation.
Well, so coming to the story that you did with Ashwin, it's a very data-heavy story.
Yeah.
Are these stories that you have done a lot previously, or is this your first time?
Yeah, I was working as a multimedia reporter for India Spin.
Okay.
So there we used to look at data.
Okay.
Yeah.
So numbers don't scare you. You're
Yeah, but right now they are.
Okay. So in the story, you've written about how the budget allocation, it's the highest amount ever for the Ministry of Education, but it's the lowest amount for the Ministry of Minority Affairs in, I think, 9 years, right?
Yeah.
Can you decode that for us?
Yeah, sure. So the thing is, we have analyzed that how the budget allocation has been for the Ministry of Minority Affairs under Modi's government from 2014 till 2023, and then we compared it that how the budget for the Ministry of Education has increased over the years, and this time also the budget for Ministry of Education is over 800 crores more than the last year, but the budget for the Ministry of Minority Affairs is even lower than what it was in 2014. It's
Right.
like some 17% lower than what it was in 2014. So Ministry of Minority Affairs particularly looks at the education development for religious minorities in India.
Right.
So, and that was the purpose behind that ministry. It was formed after the Sachar Committee's report's recommendation in 2006.
Okay.
So that's the whole purpose of that
Right.
ministry, to the education upliftment for the minorities. And this time it has taken a major hit in 2023.
And what are these scholarships or fellowships that are going to be affected? Are they being, all of them cancelled, or some are just being reduced?
Yeah, so there are basically 3 broad categories in Ministry of Minority Affairs. Like, one is the schemes for the education empowerment, the second is for the skill development and livelihoods, and the third is the special program for minorities. And each of these categories has specific schemes related for that job,
Right.
job. So for the education empowerment, there are some 7 schemes and scholarships. For example, Maulana Azad National Fellowship, pre-matric scholarships, post-matric scholarship. So in the last 1 year, we had already seen that 3 of these schemes were discontinued. Maulana Azad was discontinued last year, and so was pre-matric and and Padho Pradesh.
Right.
So these schemes were particularly helping like millions of students from minority backgrounds. So now when these schemes are not there, so we don't know. So of course, they'll be, they'll be further pushed to the edges.
Right. So I think for at least one of the schemes, I think the Maulana Azad scheme, the ministry said that they're cutting it down because there is an overlap with another scheme. Is that correct?
Yeah. Smriti Irani has said that Maulana Azad, she has given the same reason for MANF and
Okay.
pre-matric scholarship. So pre-matric scholarships, so she's saying that these are the schemes which overlap with the right to education scheme in India. So therefore they're discontinuing. But that was the whole purpose of it, that was the whole purpose of Ministry of Minority Affairs, to uplift people from minorities, because the national literacy level, if you look at literacy level of the minorities is lower than the national literacy level. Your national literacy level is around 77%, but for the minorities it is around 50%. So this is taking away the whole purpose of the ministry.
Right. It is for the upliftment
Yeah,
of that
and-
particular
yeah,
group that
yeah.
needs to be.
Exactly. So
Right.
then if you cannot give a reason that it overlaps with other these schemes overlaps with other schemes, because those schemes cover the whole population, and this scheme is it has a targeted audience.
So we will discuss this in further detail.
Sure.
But for now, getting to Pallavi's story as well, which I would really recommend everyone reads, because it's a beautifully written story and also has a lot of intersectionality of land, of caste, and of a lot of important things that are unique to only India in some ways. So starting with this, Pallavi, I want to know, how did you come to this story? Did you approach it from the angle of, you want to cover this land grabbing thing that happens in India, or did you approach it because you met one of the victims and you thought that this could be a good entry into a story like this?
Sure. Thank you so much for reading the story and enjoying it. So essentially, I came across Lal Bihari's story a couple of years ago. He's been covered widely by a lot of national and international publications. And one thing that I noticed over the years in all the coverage was that people found his struggle very fascinating. Kidnapping his own nephew, bribing officials just to get a police complaint, creating a ruckus at legislative assembly session, and there's a lot of fascination with these extreme acts. But what I was curious about, what drove this desperation? Obviously he was driven to a certain extent that he did all of these things just to get attention. But why would he go to such extremes? And when I spoke to him, he was like, yeah, I've done this, but you need to understand why I did this. And the reason behind it is something that everyone wants. You need land for basic things. You don't live in the sky, you live on land, and you need it. And that's why land is one of the leading factors of crime. And UP is sort of like a state where we look at crime, and crime stories are so popular that they've made it to popular culture, TV shows and everything. And there's this whole this gritty angle of crime intersecting with policing and politics and everything. And in the middle of this, we also know that land laws in India are a colonial remnant. And the powers that be exploit these land laws to further marginalize a lot of backward communities, marginalized communities. But I wanted to go dig deeper, and I wanted to look into how crime plays a role. And in a way, these kind of crimes also reflect this larger sort of so essentially I was fascinated by Lal Bihari's desperation, and I wanted to find out what drove him into committing all these extreme acts. And I wanted to look into land laws and how porous they are. If the powers that be can sort of exploit them to further marginalize communities, how do these crimes factor into this landscape? How do these crimes play a role? And I spoke to Lal Bihari, and of course, his organization played a big role in tracking other people. But I ended up meeting 4 people, and I from their stories, I realized that everyone has different kind of stories, but they're all related to land and how precious it is and how precarious it is.
So that is
in
the
India.
common factor linking them together.
That was a
besides
common
being
factor.
declared dead.
Yeah. And in India, like it's so common, right? Like we look at these incidents and we're like, oh, हाँ यहाँ पे तो होता ही है. But like working with a foreign company gave me a sort of advantage to, like pan out, like zoom out
Yeah.
and look into the land laws and how they're being exploited, who plays a role in that. And like shockingly, there is, like a lot of data out there by anti-corruption organizations who say that, yes, there is this rampant corruption. And like, and you see it on the ground level, right? Like
Yeah.
these people are like randomly being declared dead, and they're just like struggling for decades.
And
Which
how
is
did he manage to be declared alive in 1994, right? How, if you can summarize how he succeeded in doing that, and whether there are others like him who have also succeeded in reversing their deaths in a way.
For sure. So Lal Bihari's, I think he's one of the first cases, or I think the first case where there was actually some success.
Wow.
And according to him, it was all because of media coverage. He said that nobody took his side. Politicians didn't take him seriously. Local people didn't take him seriously. Everyone laughed at him. He said that people called me bhoot and murda, and he found it like really distressing. He said that he was almost driven to madness. Like he was roaming around like a mad person at some point because of how traumatizing it all was. And imagine like spending like 20 years not being taken seriously. That's a little crazy, right? Like it would drive anybody crazy. So he said that the only thing that made the local officials reverse this is media attention. And I think one of the first reports that came out on him was in 1991, which was a Times report. And that was the first time the local authorities took notice of it. And his trial essentially got expedited because of that reporting. And like he got noticed and he continued with his activism. And he did all sorts of things, right? Like these are like headline grabbing things. Like according to him, he didn't mean to grab like eyeballs like this. But like he said, right, like these were all like acts of desperation. So he said that media played a big role, and in 1994 like his case was like super active, and the local authorities, like the local tehsildar, he finally like reversed that alteration, and he said that okay, fine, like he's not alive. But according to Lal Bihari, the high court hasn't said anything, so he still thinks that the high court needs to like put out an order saying that like all of this has been reversed.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why that is important after 20 years of struggle. You want that to be noted. You want the records to be reversed everywhere that I am alive. So we'll...
Sorry, just wanted to add that in this struggle, and it's something that I didn't mention this, but in my piece, but in the 18 years of his struggle, like after he got declared alive, there were like around 300 other cases that also were successful. And there was like this local article that I found in Hindi which said that like over 300 cases have been reversed in the aftermath of Lal Bihari's case. And yeah, like that's like a small part of like success, but like thousands of cases are still lying in the courts. They're still lying at the police station, and they're still unresolved.
Okay. So that's all for the video aspect of our podcast. To catch the rest of our conversation, head on to newslaundry.com.
The subscription model is something that keeps Newslaundry afloat, but we need hundreds of thousands of people to completely transform the news ecosystem. So you pay for news, so it serves you. So click on the link with this video, subscribe to Newslaundry and pay to keep news free, और गर्व से कहो मेरे खर्च पर आज़ाद है खबरें.